All right, we are back. Welcome to another episode of The Liz Wheeler Show. I'm your host, Liz Wheeler. You know, I deliberated quite a bit before today's episode about whether or not we should cover this topic. Because, truthfully, and I've told you this before, I tread very lightly on whether to weigh in when there is some kind of infighting on our side, meaning, right-wing people fighting with other right-wing people. Whenever there's a topic that probably loosely falls under the umbrella of gossip, even if I find it interesting because, we all find gossip interesting to a certain extent, even if I personally am following along with beefs on X or something like that, I try not to weigh in unless it has some larger significance, just because it is gossip, right? It is. I've told you this about other people in our sphere in the right wing, but my bar is pretty high for people on our side. I don't have to endorse everything that someone does or says or acts or a position that they take, as long as we are generally on the same side. Like, I'm not discerning whether other people in the conservative movement are qualified to be a marriage partner or a spiritual director. Like, no, we're just a political movement. If we agree on more things than we disagree, then great, let's work together to try to achieve that common goal. And I try to be generous with people on our own side, because what happens if you are too critical of people on your own side, if you have these sort of purity tests that you apply to your own essentially friends, not only are you going to have a very small movement that's going to be rather insignificant and not influential, but it also gives ammunition to the other side to weaponize your criticism, and it distracts from the bigger fights. So, all that being said, I usually tread pretty lightly weighing in on gossip. So I deliberated whether I should talk about this today or not, but I think that there is a bigger a significant, actually, political implication to this particular story. So even though it might seem gossipy on the surface, I do want to talk about it with you. You probably saw this if you are on X, because it has been viral on X for the past couple of days. There was a cohort of conservative influencers. Now, the term influencer you can like or you can dislike. I know some people in the conservative commentariat don't like the word influencer because they think it's derogatory. I don't really care. I mean, I was called a blogger back in the day when the new media was first coming into power. So whatever the left wants to label me is not something that's high on, it's not something that triggers me particularly. But this group of conservative influencers, meaning people who are conservative commentators for a living, this is how they make their money, trying to influence other people with conservative views, they spent their Thanksgiving overseas. They went on a paid trip, a paid junket to Qatar, of all places, on one of the most American holidays in the country. On Thanksgiving Day, they spent their time in Qatar, which, again, when I first saw this, I was like, oh, that's weird. I wouldn't do that. Why would they do that? That was kind of my personal reaction to it. And then this story blew up because following this trip to Qatar that was paid for by Qatar, so Qatar, a foreign government, paid these conservatives to go overseas, visit their country. And then suddenly these people who are ostensibly conservatives begin to post on X very long, flowery defenses of Qatar and the Qatari government that didn't seem to be quite authentic. It didn't seem to be quite organic. And I'm going to give you an example of one of these. So one of the influencers that went on this paid trip to Qatar is Rob Smith. Now, I will say I know Rob Smith. I think it was 2 months ago I appeared with him on Piers Morgan. I've met him in person before. He came to one of my book launch parties in New York a couple years ago after the publication of my last book. At the time, he was talking to me about his divorce from his, quote unquote husband. So he seems like a nice guy. We obviously don't share a worldview on some pretty pivotal issues, but he posted after visiting Qatar, and we're going to bring this up on the screen so you can see it. I mean, it's a pretty viral post. It's been viewed 3.5 million times. So you may have already seen this post organically. It's a picture of him on a balcony overlooking Qatar. And this is his post. He says, My first trip to Qatar has been eye-opening. This is a very different Middle East than I experienced as a U.S. Army soldier deployed during Operation Iraqi Freedom. Long before I was a political commentator, media personality, and podcaster, I was a United States soldier tasked with defending and protecting America. It's something that I have literally put my life on the line to do, and something I take very seriously. He writes, did you know that there's a U.S. Air Force base in Qatar that hosts 10,000 active duty American soldiers? I did not, Rob Smith writes. I wasn't aware of a great deal of things about Qatar, only misperceptions and half-truths I'd read about online. When the opportunity was presented to me with full authority and autonomy to ask the tough questions of the officials I'd been meeting with, and I did, he says, I decided to risk any potential criticism and to travel and experience it for myself. I spent days meeting with various American officials stationed in Qatar as well as members of their government, speaking with congressmen and congresswomen about the complex geopolitical relationship and financial partnerships that Qatar has with the United States, visiting the campus of Georgetown University based in Qatar, and encountering an Islamic population that is quite different from the far-left radicals we're dealing with in the United States of America. Rob Smith writes, in the weeks and months before my visit, Qatar has been visited by patriotic American servants like Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, and of course, our 47th president, real Donald Trump. I'm proud to follow in their footsteps, Rob Smith writes, and doing my part to understand Qatar, bringing my military and media experience and expertise to help our various ambassadors and American officials currently serving understand the peculiarities of the social media moment we're in, and helping to keep America strong by understanding and highlighting the unique and mutually beneficial military and financial partnerships that we share with Qatar. It has been an eye-opening few days, Rob Smith writes, and I cannot wait to share more with you. Now, if your reaction after hearing that post or reading that post was anything like mine was, maybe you scratched your head after you read that because it reads a little bit like a scam email. It reads a little bit, I mean, to be perfectly frank, my gut reaction when I read that was, shouldn't you register as a foreign lobbyist after writing this post, Rob? I don't know if he got paid directly for this post or not, but the post itself makes you wonder because it seems like a piece of propaganda. It seems, first of all, a U.S. Army soldier knows that there's an Air Force base in Qatar. Most people know that there's an Air Force base in Qatar. But the phraseology of this post is weird. It's just, it's weird. It doesn't sit right because it reads like propaganda for Qatar. And that's strange. And again, I'm not weighing in on this just to be critical of this one person or a dumb post that he wrote. I'm weighing in on this because there's a significant political implication to this. Before I detail that, there's another influencer besides Rob Smith. Her name is Emily Saves America, or that's the name she goes by online. I'm actually not sure what her real last name is. She also posted an almost identical picture to Rob Smith, which again makes you wonder, was this staged? Is this the only balcony in Qatar? She posted a selfie of herself with the caption, "So beautiful, can't wait to come back." And then her post also went quite viral, over 3 million views. And she posted a follow-up post after she had been pretty roundly criticized for that picture. She posted this. She said, I genuinely can't believe how clueless some people are. Qatar hosts Formula One, and people from all over the world fly in for it. Tourists, models, celebrities, fans. It is a massive international destination. And honestly, it was amazing to finally feel safe and not be surrounded by homeless crackheads and criminals for once. I could actually relax and enjoy myself. Maybe if you salty losers, she writes, left your bedrooms and visited a place before obsessively talking about it, you wouldn't sound so chronically online and jealous. Again, it just doesn't ring quite true. Why all of a sudden are these influencers coming to the defense of Qatar? The reason I bring that question up is because of what the reality of Qatar is. And the reason that I mentioned the topic of conversation that Rob Smith engaged with me at my book launch party about his divorce from his then quote unquote husband, Rob Smith is openly gay, is the point of that story, is because they write these glowing recommendations of Qatar, and yet their own behavior is actually illegal in Qatar. If you look at Qatari law, it's illegal to evangelize for any other religion besides Islam. You can be put in prison or worse from that. You are not allowed to preach publicly about Christianity or distribute any kind of religious materials. You can be arrested if you do so. You can't even question the tenets, the teachings of the Islamic religion, that is a criminal offense in Qatar. You cannot criticize the rulers of Qatar. You have to praise them. You're not allowed to have any dissent. That is also, you can be arrested for that because it, quote unquote, sows discord. Same-sex sexual relations in Qatar are illegal and punishable by imprisonment. If you engage in any kind of gay sex, then you are considered a criminal under the Islamic law in Qatar. And they, of course, and probably these posts are good evidence of it, they have a two-tier justice system, a justice system that oppresses regular people and lets off the elites, holds them to an easier standard, which is pretty evident. That's exactly what's happening here to Rob Smith and to Emily Saves America. They're certainly not being held to the legal standard that the people of Qatar are being held to. So here's where we have a two-prong problem. And this is why I wanted to bring this up. So over the course of the past decade and a half, I have done this, and I have not been alone. There's been a whole cohort of us on the right who have risked our careers, and it's been great. It's been fun. It's been totally worth it to break the mainstream media monopoly on news. We have risked our own money in business ventures to go independent. We have broken with cable news, which used to have a monopoly, even on conservative commentary. We have dedicated ourselves to making sure that when the mainstream media, whether this is the New York Times, the Washington Post, whether it's the Atlantic, whether it's CNN or MSNBC, whatever it might be, when they propagate a lie on behalf of the Democrats, we have dedicated ourselves to using every new media channel possible to make sure that the truth, the reality reaches you, the American people. And it has been challenging work. And I'm very proud to say that it's also been very successful work. We in the new media on the right have broken the mainstream media monopoly. What the New York Times writes or what the Washington Post writes, the headline on CNN in the evening is no longer the only thing that the American people hear. They know that there are other venues where they can actually determine for themselves what is true based on the information and not just trust an old institution like the New York Times. And the reason that it was so critically important that we make this effort to break the mainstream media monopoly on news is because the mainstream media are propagandists for the other side. They're propagandists. The definition of propaganda is extremely important. Propaganda is running a PR campaign on behalf of the government while withholding either exculpatory information or inventing false information in order to create a certain perception in the minds of the people to whom you are speaking. And that's what the mainstream media has done over the course of the past, 3 decades. Before I was even in this business, the mainstream media was always telling lies on behalf of the Democrats in order to smear Republicans and withholding exculpatory information or stories that would have changed the minds of the American people in favor of Republicans. They were withholding that information. And propagandists are the worst kind of liars because they've sold their souls. They're not just liars. They're not just individual sinners. They're lying to manipulate. And they're doing it for money and for power. And that's what makes it, that's why we're also revolted by the idea of propaganda. Because the person engaging in propaganda has sold their soul. And so when I see conservative influencers like Rob Smith and Emily Saves America engaging in paid trips to Qatar and these posts that have all the earmarks of foreign propaganda, it actually makes me sad. Because the currency of the new media, the reason that you're with me today is because you trust me. It's not because I've never made an error. It's not because I've never changed my mind on a position. It's not because there's never going to be a time that I'm wrong about something. I'm human. Of course, there's going to be times where there's an error or I change my mind or I'm just wrong about something. But you trust me to be honest with you. You trust me to be upfront with you. You trust me to be transparent with you. And I've proven that this year, actually. We went through the whole Epstein binder saga together where people were like, wait a second, what happened? And my response to that was to be as upfront, as honest, and as transparent with you as possible. And I know you appreciated it because you told me, so many of you told me that you did. And our audience has grown astronomically since then because of our transparency. And when you see these posts from Rob Smith and from Emily Saves America, the first thing that you feel, obviously, is that there's something not quite right. Is this propaganda? Were they paid to post this? And were they not upfront about it? And you question the fundamental currency of the new media. You question whether you can trust them. And my answer to that is, I don't think so. I can speak for myself only, but if I see a post now from Rob Smith or from Emily Saves America or any of these other influencers who are on this trip, well, we don't know whether that's actually their opinion on a matter or whether someone else, some group or some country or some individual paid them to say these words. The trust has been broken. And when you can't trust someone anymore, as I said before, it's not just sad on an individual basis. I don't know these individuals that well. That part, in a sense, doesn't matter to me, but it's so important on the right in new media. This is what sets us apart. We are actually trustworthy. We are honest. We are upfront. We are transparent. We are communicating reality to you. And the moment that begins to become obfuscated, especially when money is involved, especially foreign money, running propaganda for a country that, yes, by the way, the United States has what I call a strategic partnership or alliance with Qatar, but there are two different types of alliances when it comes to our relationships with foreign countries. There's strategic alliances and there are moral alliances. A strategic alliance would be an alliance with a country like Saudi Arabia, where we don't share values, we don't share a culture, we don't share a belief system with Saudi Arabia, but we want them to be close to us because if they're not close to us, then they're going to get close to China or Russia, and that does not serve the United States' interest. That is a strategic partnership. It's not a partnership really based on, to be perfectly blunt here, I'm not the one serving as the diplomat or the ambassador. It's not really a partnership based on trust. It's a partnership based on what is going to be best geopolitically for the United States. You can compare that with a moral alliance around the world. Take the UK, for example. The UK, we share the same worldview. Western civilization. We share English common law. That was the bedrock of the American justice system. We share a Christian heritage with the United Kingdom. That's a moral alliance. And yes, it's also strategic, but primarily it's a moral alliance. And it's fine to have both types of partnerships all around the world, but it's also important to differentiate between those two types of alliances and calibrate your behavior and your defense of that country based on what type of alliance we are in partnership with them. Another sponsor who I'm proud to partner with, and I'm so grateful for so many of you supporting this mission, is Preborn. This Christmas, and we're getting so close to Christmas, as we celebrate the gift of life, you have an opportunity to share that same gift with a mother and her baby. Imagine a young woman facing an unplanned pregnancy. She feels alone and unsure of what to do. She's scared. Maybe she's being coerced, and she's searching for hope. That's where Preborn Ministry comes in. Steve Jobs, Andrea Bocelli, Steph Curry, Jack Nicholson, Celine Dion, Oprah, just to name a few, all unplanned. And so many others. Maybe you were unplanned. I have no doubt that you know someone and love someone who was unplanned. God's plan of redemption often works in the unplanned. When a woman is struggling to make a life-altering decision, Preborn network of clinics is there. Every mother that Preborn serves faces this moment of decision when she sees her baby's ultrasound. In that sacred moment, she has the opportunity to say yes to that baby, to that life. And Preborn's mission is to help her find the courage and the faith and the support to do so. This Christmas, for just $28, you can help save a life that could change the world, a life that reflects our Creator. And thanks to a special matching grant, your gift is now doubled. To donate, dial pound 250 and say the keyword baby, and understand that your $28 funds an ultrasound for a mother to see her baby on that screen. And when she sees her baby on that ultrasound screen, she is more than likely to choose life for that baby. So dial pound 250 now and say that keyword baby and understand that when you're saying that word, you're saving that baby. You can also go to preborn.com/Liz. That's preborn.com/Liz. And thank you to everyone who has been contributing to this life-saving mission. I greatly appreciate all of you. So when you're looking at Qatar, is this a country that shares our values, or is this a country that strategically we need to maintain, I would call it an impersonal business relationship with, so that they don't go partner with our enemy? It almost reminds me, actually, of Operation Paperclip after World War II. If you look at Operation Paperclip, that's when the United States government brought over Nazi scientists and allowed them to integrate into American society, gave them aliases. They worked at the highest in the upper echelons of our government for NASA. And you think this is so distasteful. Why would you allow Nazi scientists that worked for Adolf Hitler to come to America, essentially to get amnesty for what they've done, never to face accountability for the crimes they committed? In the government, our government sponsors this. Like, your first reaction is, what is happening here? Until you realize that, yes, it is distasteful. You don't have to like it, but the reason that the United States did that was so that these Nazi scientists didn't go to the Soviet Union, because it was essentially a binary choice. Either the Soviet Union was going to recruit these Nazi scientists, or the Americans were. And so it was a defensive maneuver on the part of the American government. The American government said, well, we would rather suffer the consequences of bringing these Nazi scientists to the United States and integrating them into American society and hiding what they've done essentially from the American people, versus allowing their scientific expertise to benefit the Soviets, because the Soviets were one of our biggest adversaries at that time. You can view our relationship with Qatar through that same sort of lens. It's a defensive partnership. It's a strategic partnership. It's not a moral partnership. When you partner with someone, it doesn't extend them automatic moral equivalence. If you look at the reality, not just of those couple of laws that I mentioned in Qatar, but if you look at the reality of what they do, Qatar is one of the leading sponsors and funders of Islamic terrorism all around the world. And I have numbers here. This is not just, oh, Qatar bad because that's the popular thing to say. Qatar gives billions of dollars to Hamas. Since 2012, Qatar has given $1.8 billion. That's billion with a B to Hamas. And they've pledged to give $1.5 billion more in 2023. That's a lot of money to a terror group that didn't just kill Israelis on October 7th, 2023. It killed American citizens. Hamas killed American citizens. And by the way, I know some people are going to bring this up about the conservative influencers. It wasn't just conservative political influencers who were invited to Qatar, paid for by the Qatari government. There were a lot of Hollywood celebrities that were also invited, and they appeared. I mean, I think I saw Gordon Ramsay, the chef. He was there, and Jessica Alba posted about it. But here's the thing. I wouldn't do that if I were them. I don't think it's a moral partnership. When I partner with someone to sponsor this show, it's either because I genuinely like their products and use their products, because we share a worldview and values, and it's a business I want to promote because I think you guys will like the products, or because we have done an extensive analysis and nothing about the business, the product, or their mission contradicts our worldview in any way. That's how we analyze sponsorships and partnerships on this show. So when Jessica Alba posted on social media a picture of herself in Qatar, she at least had the decency to mark on her Instagram post that it was a paid partnership. So you can criticize her for taking money from a country that sponsors Islamic terrorism, and I do criticize her for doing that. I don't think that's the right thing to do. I wouldn't do that if I were her. But at least she said that it was a paid partnership. So it's not propaganda. That makes her a paid spokeswoman. A paid spokeswoman, you are at least admitting that you are running a PR campaign on behalf of someone else. But if you don't say that it's a paid partnership, like those posts from Rob Smith and Emily Saves America, then it appears to be propaganda. All right, so in addition to Hamas, Qatar gives $2 billion annually to the Muslim Brotherhood. This is per a 2014 analysis. It's not just Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood. The Al-Nusra Front in Syria, Qataris have given $100 million in private donations in 1 year alone. And by the way that the Qatari government operates, they oftentimes disguise governmental support, financial support for these terror groups by having private citizens make the donations. But it's not truly private citizens making donations the way that maybe you would make a donation to your favorite charity or you would tithe at your church. When private citizens make enormous financial donations in Qatar, it is at the behest and sanctioned by the government. It is supposed to be a way of giving the government plausible deniability while the government is the one orchestrating it. Qatar has also funded the Houthi rebels in Yemen. They of course, engage in arms smuggling. They shelter Hamas leaders, Taliban leaders, Muslim Brotherhood leaders. They also fund Al-Qaeda and ISIS. I mean, the worst of the worst terrorists that have and continue to harm Americans, both here and all around the world, they get their funding, their lifeblood, if you will, from Qatar. From the 1990s to 2015, Qatari, some private citizens, fundraised, and delivered millions of dollars for Al-Qaeda in Pakistan and Syria and Iraq and Somalia and Yemen. This is not good. This is not a moral partnership. This is a strategic alliance. A strategic alliance. From 2013 to 2017, again, these so-called private Qatari donors that aren't really private donors funded ISIS via giving them firearms and weapons and literal money during the Syrian civil war. This is not something to look away from. The Muslim Brotherhood support in and of itself would be enough to disqualify someone from defending or partnering with Qatar. Do you know the express purpose of the Muslim Brotherhood? There's a reason that the Trump administration is designating the Muslim Brotherhood as a foreign terrorist organization. It's because the stated purpose of the Muslim Brotherhood, and I'm quoting here, Allah is our objective, they say. The Quran is our constitution. The Prophet is our leader. Jihad is our way. Dying in the way of Allah is our highest hope, end quote. That's the Muslim Brotherhood, whom is supported with resources and funding by Qatar. The Muslim Brotherhood, they want to, quote, revive the true Islam in personal and public life. They want to establish Islamic governance, that's Sharia law, through education and social services and political participation. They say that Islam is the solution. That's the main slogan. They want to liberate Muslim lands from foreign domination and secular authoritarian regimes. And they want to unify the global community of Muslims under Islamic principles, eventually reestablishing a caliphate. That's the Muslim Brotherhood that the Trump administration is designating chapter by chapter to be a foreign terrorist organization because they are, and they receive an enormous part of their funding from Qatar. It is morally problematic to act as a propagandist of this country. It's disappointing to see conservatives selling their souls for what, a couple of bucks? It's sad because the new media, the media on the right, has made such inroads in breaking the monopoly of the mainstream media who acted as propagandists. It would be a colossal mistake for some people on the right to operate in the same way as propagandists for immoral causes just because they happen to be getting the paycheck this time. There are a lot of countries, by the way, that try to buy off influencers. It's not just Qatar. There's also Ukraine. And this is relevant to what we've been talking about all week on this show. We've been talking about the seditious six, Senator Mark Kelly, Senator Slotkin, these six members of Congress who are encouraging the United States military essentially to disobey President Trump's orders because they're insinuating, the seditious six is insinuating that Trump's orders are illegal and that individual military members will be prosecuted once Democrats get power back if they obey President Trump's orders, especially as it relates to blowing up the Venezuelan narco-terrorism boats. Well, speaking of countries that buy off influencers, the brother of Senator Mark Kelly, of course, is the leader of the seditious six. His twin brother, Scott Kelly, was hired by Ukraine, by Zelensky.
This is what Amuse posts on X. He says, Zelensky enlisted Senator Mark Kelly's twin brother to raise $2.8 billion for a U.S. aid-created propaganda arm targeting U.S. voters and politicians. Much of the money moves anonymously via crypto. Observers note the conflict of interest. The brother of Senator Mark Kelly helping run a foreign influence operation targeting the very government his twin serves in. Obviously, that's unethical. Of course it is. That's obvious. Obviously unethical. It's not just Qatar. It's not just Ukraine. There are a lot of countries that try to pay off influencers, that try to pay off influential figures. You're going to recognize the next couple of countries when we discuss them in just a second. But I want to give a shout out to one of the sponsors of today's episode, and that's Crowd Health. I love Crowd Health. My family is part of Crowd Health. We have had a great experience with Crowd Health, and I highly recommend that you join us because the time is nigh. This time of year, insurance companies are hoping that you'll sleepwalk into another cycle of overpriced premiums, network headaches, and endless fine print. It's nauseating to think about. Open enrollment season for insurance companies where they're betting that you won't question anything they do, but you should, because there's finally a better way. Crowd Health is not insurance. I call it assurance. It's a community of people who've had enough of the old system and are taking healthcare into their own hands. For under $100 a month, you get access to prescription discounts, lab testing tools, a network of quality doctors, and a team that negotiates medical bills on your behalf. If something major happens, you pay the first $500, and then the crowd steps in to help you pay the rest. It's what healthcare used to feel like before it got hijacked by bureaucracy and bad policy. You know, Obamacare. Crowd Health members have already saved over $40 million simply by refusing to overpay, and you can too. This open enrollment, take your power back. Join Crowd Health. To get started today for just $99 for your first 3 months, go to joincrowdhealth.com and use my promo code Liz. That's joincrowdhealth.com, promo code Liz. Again, Crowd Health is not insurance. I call it assurance. It's time to opt out. Take your power back. This is how we win. Joincrowdhealth.com, promo code Liz. Again, as you know, when you are an independent media figure, you are running a business, right? In order to dedicate your time to an independent endeavor the way that I do, obviously you have to make money doing that. And there's nothing wrong with monetizing your endeavors. There's nothing wrong with having sponsors and promoting products or partnering with companies when it's mutually beneficial. There's nothing wrong with that. I know that there's sometimes criticism of I guess conservatives at large for monetizing their podcasts or their social media feeds. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. It's you have to, for one thing. That's how you make money, but there's nothing unethical about it unless the product or the company that you're partnering with or the country that's paying you is in some way morally problematic. And that distinction, I think, is very important. But as I was saying, it's not just Qatar. It's not just Ukraine that tries to pay off influencers. We also have Russia that tries now and again to influence the right. I mean, you remember the Lauren Chen Tenant Media operation, that FBI bust of that media company that Lauren Chen and her husband had created, that was funded by essentially Russian government money or money from a Russian oligarch. That was an effort, of course, and I know that those people, those conservative influencers who had taken money from Lauren Chen and Tenant, claimed that actually they never got any direction on what they were supposed to say or not say about Russia or any other topic. And you know, some of those people I like. You can believe them, you can question them. It was a kind of nasty situation that they had gotten themselves into because they were offered a lot of money. And I know because Lauren Chen had called me at the time as well and offered me money. And I had said to her, where exactly is this money coming from? And when she couldn't answer that, I thought, you know what? When someone calls you and offers you just an absolutely whopping amount of money, and it seems too good to be true, and they can't explain to you where that money's coming from, it probably is too good to be true, and you should run far, far away. And that's exactly what I did. I did not get involved because, you know, sometimes your spidey sense is just dead on correct. China is another company or another country that, of course, tries to pay off influencers, not just in the media, but in all kinds of different institutions. You know, think about Roy Singham and his wife, Jody Evans, and how Jody Evans and Code Pink, they now propagandize for the Chinese Communist Party because they're being paid by the Chinese communists. Think about the Confucius Institutes on college campuses. Think about Hunter Biden and Joe Biden and how Joe Biden's views on China, his political views, shifted and softened once Hunter Biden started getting money from the Chinese Communist Party. there are a lot of countries that try to do this. And we on the right have been pretty good about saying no and walking away and understanding that money can be morally tainted and that your primary goal is not just to collect all the money you can if it requires you to do something immoral. And that is why, I mean, listen, it's not just those governments. There's also allegations out there that El Salvador is paying off conservative influencers, although particular conservative influencers like Elijah Schaffer deny being paid by El Salvador, even after being in an interview in which he answered that he was working for the government. He says he does not. Make of that what you will. I mean, Israel and the Saudis and France and the UK have all faced allegations of trying to pay off influencers. Well, this brings us back to the beginning. Why this is a problem. Because on the right, in new media, in order to break the propaganda monopoly of the left, requires us to be honest. It requires that you trust us. And when that trust is broken, when you are dishonest, that social compact is irrevocably broken. And when that's broken, that does tremendous damage to this effort to make sure that the mainstream media is not being a propaganda arm of the left, that they're not an effective propaganda arm, I should say, of the left. And that's why it's important. When a media figure or a personality reviews or opines on a topic without revealing their conflict of interest, without revealing compensation from sources that would impact their opinions and statements, that's when it becomes dishonesty. That's when they are essentially feigning objective analysis because it's anything but objective analysis. And we should roundly reject this on the right because it threatens the foundation of the new media on the right, which is that trust and that honesty. Even putting morals aside for a second, it just threatens that business structure. But of course, the moral implications are also, in my opinion, quite significant. Which is why I wanted to talk about this today, because I think it has implications not just for these individuals who have now significantly damaged their credibility, and unfortunately, that's the proper perception of them, because we don't know if they can be trusted or if what they're saying, if they're spokespeople without revealing that they're spokespeople. It certainly appears that way. It's not just damaging to their own credibility, it's damaging to the effort of the right-wing movement, the conservative movement, to make sure that the mainstream media doesn't have a monopoly on news, because when they do have a monopoly, they serve as propagandists, and we are supposed to be better than that. All right. I said we were going to talk about this next topic on Monday, and here we are on Wednesday, just getting to it, because that's how the news cycle rolls. An internal memo at the FDA, and by the way, if you're watching on YouTube, you are going to have to switch channels at this moment. You're going to have to hop on over to X at x.com/Liz_Wheeler, or you're going to have to go over to Spotify. That's where I would recommend you go. Just search The Liz Wheeler Show. We have video on Spotify now, and we do not censor on Spotify. We do, unfortunately, it's very aggravating. I'm never going to get over this. We do have to tiptoe around terms of service on YouTube, even though they have softened their terms of service because they're afraid of the Trump administration. They still don't let you say certain things without punishing you in the algorithm or giving you a strike. And this topic would be one of those topics that YouTube does not want you to hear about. So if you're watching on YouTube, please go over to Spotify or go over to X, because you are going to want to read this internal FDA memo with me. Today's show was a little bit of a smattering of topics. We jumped here and there and everywhere, and I appreciate everybody following along. I do want to read a comment from YouTube from yesterday's episode. If you haven't watched yesterday's episode, we talked to Jason Buttrill. He's the head writer and researcher for Glenn Beck. He's also a former DOD intel analyst, and we talked about the truth about what's really happening with Venezuela and these narco-terrorist boats, and how it's not just drug trafficking. There's a lot more that meets the eye. And if you had any questions about why President Trump is engaging militarily with Venezuela, highly recommend you listen to that episode. Jason brought a lot of answers, and he also presented a lot of questions that we need to press the Trump administration for. I think if the Trump administration educated the public a little bit more about what was really happening, people would probably support what's going on down there. But Jason, a different Jason, not Jason Buttrell, commented on the episode with Jason Buttrell and said, New York Times to disagree with another liberal newspaper is gold. That's a win for Trump, and shame on the Washington Post for lies. And thank you, New York Times. Can't believe it, but yeah, I still hate them. I love that because that's essentially my stream of consciousness yesterday as I was like, hey, New York Times, thank you. I still think you're a terrible place, but good work in this one situation, but don't think that you have earned your trust again because you're still despicable liars most of the time, except for this one time that you debunked the Washington Post for being worse liars. Essentially, I feel the exact same way, Jason. Okay, guys, thank you for being here today. Make sure that you're subscribed to the show, youtube.com/Liz Wheeler. On Spotify, we are The Liz Wheeler Show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. I'm Liz Wheeler. This is The Liz Wheeler Show.